Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you very much for joining us today. I just wanted to seek the blessings of Radha Krishna, Krishna Balaram, Gauranitai, Srila Prabhupada, Guru Maharaj, so that we can dive into a nectar of the overview of Srimad Bhagavatam 10th Canto, 83rd chapter, and wanted to seek the good wishes of all the assembled Vaishnavas. This is verse 39 of...
Do you want me to do Narayan Namaskritir?
Oh, very good point. Yes. Let's do that. Good point.
Narayan Namaskritir Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayadudiriye. Before reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, and unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayashtu padreshu nityam bhagavata seviya bhagavati uttam sloke bhaktir bhavati nashki. By regular attendance in the classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of the service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with the transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. So, well done for remembering. Okay. Atma Ramasya Tasyema Yavam Vayam Evaigradashi Dasikaha Sarvasanga Nivritti Yadha Tapasha Sa Cha Babhuvima. Translation: by renouncing all material association and practicing austere penances, we queens have all become personal maidservants of the self-satisfied Supreme Lord. So this chapter is really interesting, where Draupadi meets the queens of Krishna, and each of them describe how they married Lord Krishna. So in the beginning of the chapter, Lord Shri Krishna returned from his meeting with the gopis. So we finished off yesterday, where chapter 82, Krishna was explaining to the gopis about his divine position. One is never separated from the Lord because he's always with us. And Krishna asked King Yudhishthira and his other relatives whether they were well. They replied, "My Lord, anyone who has just once imbibed through his ears the honey of your pastimes can never know misfortune." So this is an interesting comment. If we have had the great fortune of hearing Krishna's pastimes, then we are on the path, on the journey back to Godhead, for sure. And yes, in this world, there's always going to be some calamity taking place, but that is not the misfortune that we should worry about. The misfortune is not being close to Krishna. But if one has heard Krishna's pastimes, then that person will never know misfortune because we're on the path back to Godhead. Lord Krishna's relative said, "Oh Master, how can misfortune arise for those who have even once freely drunk the nectar coming from your lotus feet? This intoxicating liquor pours into the drinking cups of their ears, having flowed from the minds of great devotees through their mouths. It destroys our forgetfulness of you and dispels, we bow down to you, the final destination of perfect saints." So then the women of Adnaka and Kaurav clans met and began discussing topics about Govinda. So the one common factor about all of these personalities is when they get together, they talk about Krishna. So that's a very good guide for us. Whenever we get together, let's talk about Krishna. Draupadi inquired from Lord Krishna's wives how they married him. So each one then explained to Draupadi, because she was very inquisitive. How did you marry my favorite personality? Because she was best friends with Krishna. They were really, really good friends. Queen Rukmini spoke first. Many kings were intent on giving me in marriage to Shishupal. Thus at my wedding, they all stood with bows in hand, ready to support Shishupal against any opponents. But Sri Krishna came and forcibly took me away, as a lion takes away his prey amidst goats and sheep. So this is the inquisitive Draupadi asking about the queens. Satyabhama, she said, when my uncle Prasena was killed, my father Shatrajit falsely accused Lord Krishna of murder. To clear his name, Krishna defeated Jambavan, recovered the Shyamantak jewel, and returned it to Satrajit. Repentant, my father presented the Lord with both the jewel and myself. And then Queen Jambavati, she said, when Sri Krishna entered my father's cave in search of the Shyamantak jewel, at first my father Jambavan did not understand who he was, his own master and worshipable deity. The goddess of fortune Sita, so the husband of the goddess of fortune, the goddess Sita rather. So my father fought with him for 27 days and nights. So what Jambavati is saying, my father didn't understand that this Krishna is none different from Ramachandra, who he worshipped. Finally, Jambavan understood that Krishna was none other than Ramachandra, his worshipable Lord. Then he gave Krishna the Shyamantak jewel along with me. I am simply the Lord's maidservant. Queen Kali. These queens were very humble. They understood that Krishna didn't just belong to them. He belongs to everyone. They understood. They reflect that in their comments. Queen Kalindi said, to obtain Krishna as my husband, I performed severe austerities. Then one day, Lord Krishna came to me in the company of Arjuna. And at that time, the Lord agreed to marry me. Now I am engaged as a sweeper in his palace. And of course, she's not saying that out of any malice. This is her true love for the Supreme Lord. I am just a humble servant. Queen Mitravinda said, Sri Krishna came to my Swayamvar ceremony where he defeated all the opposing kings, including my brothers who dared insult him. And Krishna took me away to his city of Dwarka. May I be allowed to serve him by washing his feet life after life. Queen Satya said, my father stipulated that to win my hand, a prospective suitor would have to subdue and tie up 7 powerful bulls. Accepting this challenge, and although these bulls destroyed the false pride of many heroes, Lord Krishna playfully subdued them, defeating all his rival suitors, and married me. May I be granted the privilege of serving that Lord. Queen Bhadra, she said, my father invited his nephew Krishna, to whom I had already given my heart, and offered me to him as his bride. The dowry was an entire military division and a retinue of my female companions. My ultimate perfection is this, to always be allowed to touch Lord Krishna's lotus feet as I wander from life to life, bound by my karma. Their humility was amazing. Queen Lakshmana said to Draupadi, at my Swayamvar, as at yours, a fish target was fastened near the ceiling. But in my case, the fish was concealed on all sides, and only its reflection could be seen in a pot of water below. Several kings tried to hit the fish with an arrow, but failed. Arjun then made his attempt. He concentrated on the reflection of the fish in the water and took careful aim. But when he released his arrow, it only grazed the target. Then Sri Krishna fixed his arrow on the bow and shot it straight through the target, knocking it to the ground. I placed the victory necklace on Sri Krishna's neck, but the kings failed to raise a violent protest. Or they tried to raise a violent protest, in fact. Lord Krishna valiantly fought them, cutting off their heads, arms, legs of many, and sending the rest fleeing for their lives. Then the Lord took me to Dwarka for our lavish wedding. So, Rohini Devi representing all the other queens, because it would have taken some time to go through all the 16,100 queens that were left. So Rohini Devi, she represented all the other queens, explaining that there were daughters of the kings defeated by Bhaumasura. The demon, Bhaumasura, had held them captive, but when Lord Krishna killed him, he had them released and he married them all. The queens didn't desire dominion over the earth, heavens. They didn't desire for facility for enjoyment, no mystic power, nor the position of Brahma, nor immortality, or even the kingdom of God. They simply desire to carry on their heads the glorious dust of Lord Krishna's feet as he tends his cows. So this is really fantastic prayers. So that's the end of chapter 43. Any questions, any comments?
Yes, probably two things.
Yes.
So much humility about this king, about the queens, isn't it? They were just, lesson for me is to just serve Krishna, whatever position you are. Basic is just to serve Krishna.
Absolutely, yeah.
And can I sing the Vishnu Padaya again? Because I made a mistake.
Yeah, go on.
Namo Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Pristaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin iti namine, Namaste Saraswati Devi, Gauravani Pracharine, Nirvignesha Shunyavad, Pashyata Dishatarine, Namo Moha Vandanaye, Krishna Prem Pradayate, Krishna is Krishna Chaitanya, Namniko Tavishe Namaha, Namo Brahmanda Devaya, Gaura Brahman Hitaya Cha, Jagat Hitaya Krishnaya, Govindaya Namo Namaha.
Good. Very nice.
When sometimes I get excited and then I make mistakes, Prabhu. This is my weakness.
No, actually, that is not a mistake. That is actually, Krishna won't accept that as a mistake. He will, when you do it in with great enthusiasm.
Yes.
There's no mistakes, actually. When we do it neglectfully, then there's a mistake. But if we do it with enthusiasm, then it's no mistake. Just Namaste Saraswati. Just say that again. Namaste.
Namaste Saraswati Devi, Gauravani Pracharine, Nirvignesha Shunyavad.
Nirvishesha.
Nirvishesha Shunyavad.
Yeah.
Okay, Nirvishesha Shunyavad. Pashyata Dishatarine. Nirvishesha.
And Namo Brahmanya. No, Namo Brahmanya, Devaya Go Brahmanya. Yeah, that's it. That's good. That's good.
Okay.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Look at this quote here. The queens didn't desire dominion over the earth, right? So they didn't want material possessions. They didn't desire heaven. They didn't want to go to heaven. They didn't want any sense enjoyment. They didn't want any mystical powers. They didn't even want the position of Brahma. They didn't even care for immortality, or even they didn't even want God, kingdom of God. So this is actually pure bhakti, because all they want is to serve the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. So this is very powerful, and as you said, this is a very good lesson to take from the queens. And most of our Guru Parampara has that same mood, that even if the Lord sends me to hell, let me still have the privilege to serve him. That's their mood. They don't care where they are. They just want to be able to remember the lotus feet of the Lord and serve him. So it's a good attitude, because when we have our desires, I want this and I want that, unfortunately, they will not be fulfilled. Or they might be fulfilled, but if they're material desires, then we'll stay in this world. But we want to actually capture the heart of Krishna. And how we capture the heart is not wanting anything. We just want to serve you. Many devotees desire, I want to go back to Godhead. That's not a bad desire. That's actually, it's bona fide, it's okay. But you will find that the prayers of the devotee, like Narottam Das Thakur and Bhaktivinoda Thakur, their prayers will be more on the lines of, wherever I am, let me remember you. Wherever I am, let me serve you. I'm not going to impose any condition on you, my Lord, that I have to be in the spiritual world to serve you. I'll serve you wherever I am. So that's a nice, that wins over the heart of the Lord, definitely. Okay, Madhusan Babu, would you like to take us through instructions?
Jai, Hare Krishna, Hare Bol. Yeah, this chapter is quite amazing when he reveals how these queens end up being married to Krishna. And it's amazing. The other day there was another class and somebody was questioning that. They didn't know much about it. Not many people know why Krishna. They just said, oh, so his argument was, it was some other class that I was on, it's once a week they do it, So he challenged me, and he said, yeah, but what about in some cultures they have this polygamy, they can marry more than one wives and this and that, so they can argue that, oh, if Krishna can marry 16,000 wives, and how but he didn't know the actually all the facts about why Krishna married that many, how these princesses were actually kidnapped by this Bhaumasura, and just like Boko Haram, they kidnap all these girls, and then they're left. The princesses were. So like when I explained to him, then he started to realize, oh, he said, where is this? Then he challenged me. He said, where is this explained? That these princesses were kidnapped by Bhaumasura. So I had to tell him, you have to actually read and understand, the 10th canto. But he accepted the argument, and so yeah, quite rightly. But then I did explain. I said, if you do want to get more than one wives, then you got to be able to clone yourself and be in a different households, serving all those wives, and being the husband as well. If you're able to do that, then obviously you can marry. But yeah, Krishna is 16,000 palaces, and each palace has a queen. But then this chapter reveals more actually, that these queens. So as I go through it, okay, chapter 83, as we learn about how each of the queens of Dwarka ends up getting married to Krishna upon Draupadi's inquiry from them, in a very amazing ways. We are being instructed to understand, as mentioned in the purport, that in fact, however, since the Lord's queens are direct expansions of his internal pleasure potency, Ladini Shakti, they fully control him with their love. So it's just a loving exchange, a devotional service. But actually, though these queens getting married to Krishna is not some easy task, for this. But Krishna, and it's actually an expansion of his Ladini Shakti. So as Rohini Devi, who was one of the 9 queens questioned by Draupadi, and speaking for the other queens, said, O saintly lady, we do not desire dominion over the earth, sovereignty of the kings of heaven, unlimited facility to enjoyment, mystic power, position of Lord Brahma, immortality, or even attainment of the kingdom of God. We simply desire to carry on our heads the glorious dust of Lord Krishna's feet, enriched by the fragrance of kumkum from his consort's bosom. So, in other words, Krishna's consort, who is Radharani, and it's actually Radharani is obviously Krishna's internal potency, the Latini Shakti. She expands, and so in that way, we realize that, Radharani's position is far more in that loving exchange than even the queens. Even queens would want to desire to, serve. So it's made clear in the purport that the Shri, because in this verse, there is a mention of Shri as the goddess of fortune, and goddess of fortune is Lakshmi Devi. We may confuse that with Vishnu on the chest of Vishnu and all that. But this Shri actually, in the purport, it's been explained that the Shri referred to here is the supreme goddess of fortune, identified by the Brihat Gautamya Tantra as Devi Krishnamai Prokta, Radhika Paradevata, Sarva Lakshmi Mai Sarva, Kanti Samohini Para. So this is actually mentioned, in that verse, that the transcendental goddess Srimati Radharani is the direct counterpart of Lord Shri Krishna. She is the central figure for all the goddesses of fortune. She possesses all the attractiveness to attract the all-attractive personality of Godhead. She is the primeval internal potency of the Lord. So it's a bit more, we may not understand at this spiritual level, but all these queens were actually serving Krishna, and the only desire. So it just shows how the dust of Krishna's feet, which is, as mentioned also that, when the cowherd, when he goes to serve as a cowherd boy, the dust from his lotus feet is on the Braj Bhumi. So the Braj Bhumi, the dust of the Braj Bhumi is so, we may not understand when we're in Vrindavan actually, but on a level where it is like Chintamani, as it's a bit explained as well somewhere, It's like Chintamani gem, which you need spiritual eyes to see that. God, yeah, amazing. But this actually expands the position of all the queens. But one thing I realized in this chapter is that, when in the next chapter as well, and the previous chapter from yesterday, that when they actually gathered together at Kurukshetra, that means everyone was there. Even Dhritarashtra was there. It's mentioned that Kunti Devi was there. We saw that, she came to Krishna, Yashoda Maya, Nanda Maharaj, cowherd boys, even the gopis were there. That means even Radharani would have been there. All the queens are there. And this chapter explains how Draupadi is then questioning the queens. How did you end up? And then also, I didn't realize how Krishna also had to shoot an arrow at the fish, which was amazing, I thought Arjun had to do that for Draupadi's swamwar.
That's right, yeah.
But Krishna does it as well. And which I didn't know that.
Yeah,
But here, obviously, what's her name? Lakshmana.
Oh, Lakshmana, yeah. Lakshmana.
Yeah, Lakshmana explains that, Krishna had to shoot an arrow, and then he had to kill so many kings because they was being challenged. There was a violent protest as well. Oh, yeah. So just amazing, but still, he has to win. Krishna has to prove his supremacy. But Yeah, so all these things happen, but then also one thing is that at this Kurukshetra, which means I mean, this must be an amazing festival
Yeah, yeah.
when everyone is there. But that means that they're eternally always together anyway. When Krishna says nobody is ever separated from him. Okay, I have to
That's good.
expand
Good.
on that.
Thank you for sharing.
Okay, Haribo.
Hare Krishna. Nice one. Any questions, any comments by anybody? Otherwise, we can stop. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. So I think we'll be doing chapter 84 on Tuesday. So thank you, everybody. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.